The N-word. The Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest the world came to a nuclear exchange. That confrontation was in the news daily, and we were practicing duck roll and cover in school. Now I believe we're much nearer an actual nuclear showdown, and that's for two reasons. China, because it's being forced to play fair in their trade, and Russia, because Putin has obviously failed in his gambit to make the USSR great again. A horrible acronym to contemplate. I'm saying what others are thinking, that Russia's getting humiliated, and were they not a nuclear power, they would fall. But they are a nuclear power. Some of their nukes are hypersonic. We could only reciprocate, not intercept, and they've already demonstrated them against Ukraine. They have attacked neighboring Poland with an intentional drone strike. That was just to gauge the NATO response. I'm saying that Putin is in an ever smaller corner with fewer and fewer options to save face. Maybe none. His dream of rebuilding the once mighty Soviet bloc is gone, and he is acting ever more desperate and reckless. There are probably no significant checks to impede his ability to launch nukes against NATO countries, including us. You see, but we assure ourselves that he'd never resort to a mutually assured destruction. That's only to keep the public calm. Just think about it. Who is more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose? And every day that passes, Putin has less to lose. Of course, one way to stay on the map is to wipe a lot of it off. And that's a distinct possibility, whether anyone dare mention it or not. Putin is getting crushed conventionally and exposing the paper tiger impotence of his overly venerated military. What's the end game in Ukraine? Conventionally, Russia hasn't much of a chance, being soundly trounced and destroying their own future through sheer depopulation. But Russia has a trump card to avoid defeat. And they are being defeated. There is nothing one can do to predict against a nuclear Armageddon. So let's anticipate something more scaled down, like theater nukes. If deployed in Ukraine, they'd most likely be contained, though the shock of another nuclear explosion would destabilize the world economy for at least a few years. The Ukrainian war has become ubiquitous in its protracted banality. But the corner Putin is pushed into gets smaller daily. Unless a face-saving exit is found, the possibility of at least one theater nuke mushrooming steadily increases. But that's Russia. How about China? China sealed its doom decades ago through their one-child policy. Although they rose in record time, their zenith has already passed. Now they have to manage the contraction, the collapse. But unlike Russia, their conventional military is formidable and quickly closing the gap with our own. However, they have only a few years, I think less than 10, to secure their place internationally before their population bomb detonates. Not to mention the present contraction of their economy, which will only accelerate when the U.S. fully imposes fair trading, the sole dividend which has fueled their ascent. For them, a military acquisition may be now or never. That most likely means Taiwan, as yet another superpower wants to restore their historic luster. McGuh. Make China great again. The nature of man is to enhance his standard of living, but the opposite is now happening in countries with big armies and lots of nukes. My point, market-wise, is not to pretend the world is spinning on a stable axis. Caution is advised.